when I was in Nigeria, I've never heard of the word feminism. And when I started writing, I've never even heard of the word. It's just that when I started writing, people just, oh, they look like feminist book, and they, especially second-class citizen, people just take it as a feminist book. What I write is the social ideas of the African woman, her social changes, her role in society, the little freedom she had in the old tradition, where women who are strong and who are outspoken are respected. She lost that because Christianity and colonization brought this demure woman, quiet woman, as the woman. And of course, we had that imposed on us. And then you find a lot of African women had to pretend.
I'm reading The Joys of Motherhood by Buchi Emecheta, which I have in my bag actually. Much better. Can I show my love for you? Can I show my love for you? I do. For you. I do. Can I show my love for you? I feel like the more I read the story, the more I remember the story. So, for example, I didn't immediately remember that Nnu Ego was married to somebody else before she married the foolish man that she married. I just think it's really interesting that I'm thinking of new things and experiencing the story and remembering the story for what it is or what I remember it to be, but coming to different conclusions now as a grown woman. And I'm in a cafe, so I don't want to talk too much. But I think the first thing that jumped out to me is that when I was younger, I used to think the story between Nnu Ego's dad, what's his name, Agbadi, and Ona, her mom, I used to think their story was like romance. And it makes sense because at the time, the romance novel that I used to read were pretty much white characters, so Ali Cohen's, Mills and Bones, things like that. And this was the first novel that I read where the characters were in such a romantic setting. So I used to think it was romance, and I got the same feeling, the same nostalgic feeling of remembering how I really used to enjoy reading the parts where Ona and Agbadi's story sort of begun. But right now, as an adult, my eyebrows are raised because I don't know if I felt awkward that Agbadi was Ona's father's friend. I don't know if I felt awkward. Maybe I did. I don't know. But the way, like how normalized it is at the time that her father's friend was chasing her and she was, quote unquote, in love with her father's friend. I also remember how I used to find it so weird that Nnu Ego was obsessed with giving birth to children. And now it makes a lot more sense to me because in the first half of when we see Nnu Ego as a grown woman, the prayer that her dad always makes is, "My sons, you will all grow to be kings amongst men. My daughters, you will all grow to rock your children's children." If you grow up hearing that all your life and you grow up seeing your father derive joy from the fact that you are his virgin daughter and you are the daughter of his equally beautiful wife, then it stands to reason that you would want to have kids. And I think one of the reasons she's also obsessed with having kids is pretty similar to one of the reasons Yejide in Stay With Me by Imami Adebayo was obsessed with having kids, because she was also an only child. Nnu Ego is an only child. Maybe this also contributed to why she was pretty obsessed with having kids. But I'm getting to the other part of this book, which is when Nnu Ego married Nnaife. That man really ruined her life. Basically where I came for my birthday last year. the noodles place that I came to my birthday last year. If you've not seen that, you should go and watch it. I'll put it in here. I am about halfway done with this book, just halfway. And there are just a lot of things that I'm experiencing in this book that I don't remember experiencing when I first read it when I was 12 or every other time I reread it. I first read it when I was 12 or 13, and then I read it when I was 14, and then I reread it when I was 15. So I read it pretty much every year after the first time that I read it. And then somehow the book got lost and I wasn't able to read it again. The one thing though that I remember, I don't know if I already said it, but one thing I remember now whilst reading the book is the nostalgia, the sense of belonging I felt when I read this book. There's just something, it feels like, it feels familiar. Now that I'm rereading it again, and I've been to Lagos a couple times, because obviously then I wasn't growing up in Lagos. I'd maybe been to Lagos once in my life at the time when I read this book, and I was always in my parents' car. So now that I'm rereading it as an adult that's visited Lagos a bunch of times, it's differently because I have this spatial awareness. I don't know if spatial awareness, but I know where these locations are and I can imagine how far these places are. And imagine, for example, Nnu Ego walking from Yaba to the island and thinking in my head that I absolutely cannot make that journey on foot. So there's a better appreciation that I have been an adult now. Another thing that I've noticed is, and I don't blame 12-year-old Aisha for not being able to come to this conclusion, but there is a very interesting discussion about how colonialism affects the experiences of the African woman, specifically the Igbo woman that is examined in this book. For example, let me see if I can find it. At this point, Nnu Ego is pregnant for the second time. She has decided to take it slow and calm and rest as much as possible for this pregnancy. And she's talking about how even though she doesn't have enough money to supplement her husband's income, at least she knows that her pregnancy is safe. And then she goes on to say, but were they not in a white man's world where it was the duty of the father to provide for his family? In Ibuza, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, in Ibuza, women made a contribution, but in urban Lagos, men had to be the sole provider. This new setting robbed the woman of her useful role. And it got me thinking because in conversations about like patriarchy, like online when men are having conversations about how, we need to go back to the traditional times. We need to go back to traditional views of husband, wife, children, family. The concept of what we know as traditional is woven into our society by colonialism. She's living her life in colonial Nigeria, and she's saying, as a matter of fact, that this new way of living, this white man's way of living, is robbing us of our traditional way of living. And in their traditional way of living, the woman made a contribution. So after the child has been weaned, the woman would drop the child with parents, by the way, parents or elderly members of the family, and then go to the market to make money to supplement the household. And then she goes on to say that, like, I have been trying to be traditional in a modern urban setting. And for me, if the people in this era, people that live their life in our age in colonial Nigeria, if they were to have conversations with us, this is what they will be saying to us. They will be saying, we used to live in the traditional setting, but we then woke up and decided to join the urban setting. And for them, what traditional setting meant is that the women had a place in the economy. They could go out and contribute, and they have their own money, and having children did not slow them down. It didn't stop them from, how did she call it? Yeah, it didn't stop them from their useful role. But then they now had to adopt the urban setting, which was the white man's way of saying that the man had to provide for his family. But now, in this era, women are saying, yeah, women should have their own money. Women are fighting for their rights to be able to earn, equal pay, all of these things. And you have these men that are refusing to follow what the society, men and women, that are refusing to follow what the urban society is saying, and they're saying, oh, they want to retain the traditional way of living, whereas this traditional way of living was not the original traditional way of living. This is the point I'm trying to prove. I thought that was very interesting. I don't think I would have come to that conclusion as a 12, 13, 14-year-old Aisha. So yeah, this is very interesting. Another thing that's interesting is obviously Nnu Ego's husband is useless. He has always been useless. This one I knew when I was 12. I knew every time I read this book, and I know now that he's a very useless man. But I found it very interesting that he always described women in this mocking way. So, for example, we say something like, oh, women, they're always looking for trouble. Women, they have an illogical way of doing things. And mind you, this man is a very stupid man. Like, I'm not even saying this as an insult. He's genuinely a stupid person. Genuinely such a stupid person. And he keeps proving that he's stupid, right? But in his mind, genuinely the way that he sees things, the way that he believes things is that women have such an illogical way of existing. That is genuinely what he believes in his mind. Mind you, this man is a completely stupid person. Another thing that I've noticed so far in the story as an adult is that I think Buchi Emecheta tries to highlight the fact that there were Nigerian men, but more accurately, African men from former British colonies that were, forcefully enlisted into the Second World War, because at some point we get a date, which is July 1939, and this was the part where Nnu Ego was narrating to us how our husband, Nnaife, foolish man, is about to go to Fernandpo, which was the colonial name for Bioku in, I think, Equatorial Guinea or something. I remember this because there's a book, The Parlor Wife. I think I watched somebody's review on that book, The Parlor Wife, and the person was talking about how the book highlighted the fact that there were many African soldiers in World War II. And so that got me thinking that this was a way for Buchi Emecheta to highlight that as well in the story. And again, this is not something I would have got when I was 12. And absolutely would not have got this. I'm going to go to a cafe now because I just want to go out, to be honest. I just want to dress up and go out because it's summer. And this is probably the last hot weekend that we're going to experience before it starts getting gloomy again. I'm still reading Joys of Motherhood. I am intending to finish it today so that I can post my wrap up. I don't know if I want to do wrap up though or post it as a vlog, to be honest, but we will see as the spirit leads. I got the toasted, I think this is like apple something banana bread, I'm not sure, and then I'm trying blueberry matcha because why not, and then my current drink.
I could be the twist, the one to make you stop, the icing on your cake, the cherry on the top. It's heaven in my heart, and we could find you some space. I could be the world to you, the missing piece, the extra sentimental kind of chemistry. Some people make it hard, with me that isn't the case.
So I got to this place where Nnaife is talking about like working in a new place and his relationship with Nnu Ego. And this bastard man said that one thing is for sure, that he has gained the respect and even fear of Nnu Ego. He gives a little housekeeping money, which he bought a bag of curry for the month and some yam. She would have to make up the rest from a trading profits. I don't know how he doesn't see the irony in this. In his mind, because he's working, mind you, the work he's doing is not like he's bringing in a lot of money, which he goes on to prove anyway. But because he's doing this work, then he has earned the right for Nnu Ego to fear him and respect him. Because obviously in this modern white man structure, a man is respected based on, a man is supposed to bring in the money, and by extension that determines his respect, which we all know this is what the patriarchal structure that we now have in society today, that people think is what is traditional, but oh well. Anyway, so then he now goes on to say, oh, Nnu Ego will have to make up the rest with our trading profits. Like, he doesn't see the irony in the fact that he wants the respect in quotes and fear that comes with using the white man's structure of patriarchy, where the man is the one that provides for the family, whilst using Nnu Ego's labor in the form of our trading profit that is supplementing what he's supposed to be doing. I have nothing to say.
So come give me a call and we'll fall into us. I'm the perfect mix of Saturday night and the rest of your life.
So I'm back with another update, and we've established that Buchi Emecheta does this thing where she writes commentaries so well into a story. I'm pretty sure I would have caught it when I was younger, but I probably just now have the words to describe the brilliance of it. You know this thing where we say that we teach boys how to manipulate the system or to use patriarchy to their own advantage, and we teach them early on that they are boys will be boys, carrying that on even to our own detriment as women. Nnu Ego does this at this point in the book. I think this is a spoiler, so I'm not going to do it. Aside from just accepting the way that the patriarchy is set up by chalking everything our husband does up to, oh, men will be men, this is what they're expected to do, blah, blah, blah. She's also doing the same thing by indoctrinating her son into it. I mean, I get it. This is how she grew up. This is the society that she grew up in. And it is a society where sons are valued more. They are valued more. And so she's bringing that into a son that is growing up in Lagos, away from that setting. Doing this by, reminding him that he's the eldest, but he's also a boy. And saying things like, oh, if the boy is going to inherit his father's properties. Mind you, they live in a one-bedroom house. I think one thing that I've realized is, even though like I mentioned earlier, there's a distinction between what is considered to be modern day in this book and the 1930s, 1940s that this book is set in, and what is considered to be traditional. One thing that has remained constant is that core concept of patriarchy, which is that the virtue of being a man, you are inherently more valuable, you're inherently better, and you inherently have more freedom to commit mistakes. Never mind that there's a big distinction between the economic reality in these different understandings of traditional and present day in the book. The core thing that is constant across board, across all of these definitions, is that men are inherently better than women by just virtue of being. I know that slowly we are kind of changing it now in what we consider present day now, but for many people, I mean, in lots of countries, infant femicide is still a big thing, where people would kill their children, or people would abort children when they find out that they are babies, or even kill babies once they are born if they find out that they are girls. So anyway, I'm looking forward particularly to reading the last chapter of this book, because I remember the first time I read the book, I never really understood the last few pages of the book. I think this was what prompted me to reread it all of the other times I reread it, because the last few pages of the book, I never really understood what Buchi Emecheta was trying to pass across. But I'm pretty sure that as an adult, grown-ass woman now, I'm definitely going to understand. So I'm trying my best not to go to the last page or last few pages, because I want to savor the moments in which I finally understand what she has been trying to tell me all this while.
The heart with a
I've left the gym and history just repeats itself. I don't even know what to say. I'm just really very sad for Nnu Ego. I've always been sad for her whenever I think of Nnu Ego's character. First of all, she's such a babe. She did not have to go through all of the things that she went through. Secondly, I think Nnu Ego is the definition of a lot of women, even till now, obviously. It's like we know things, we know that a lot of things are unfair, because I cannot count the number of times that Nnu Ego would express to herself that this feels unfair. Maybe something happens and then the men in the family or the people of their village that are living in Lagos comes to solve the situation between her and a very useless husband. Then she will feel in her heart like, this is unfair. And she still goes ahead to perpetrate that same, or like the same things that are resulting into the unfairness that she's complaining about. Rightfully so that she's complaining about this, but she then goes back to perpetuate the same things and is not willing or open to changing or even allowing herself to settle in her thoughts. So for example, there was a place, and this is very close to, at this point, our first son is, I think he's about to go to college now, so you can imagine like mid-teens, maybe 16 or so. And she has just given birth to twins, girls. These are second twins. And she's saying how the arrival of her new twin daughters had a subduing effect upon Nnu Ego. She felt more inadequate than ever. Men are only interested in male babies. And then she starts saying, God, when will you create a woman who will be fulfilled in herself? A fully human being, not anybody's appendage. After all, I was born alone, I shall die alone. What have I gained from all of this? Yes, I have many children, but what do I have to feed them on my life? I have to work myself to the bones to look after them. I have to give them my all. And if I'm lucky enough to die in peace, I even have to give them my soul. They will worship my dead spirit to provide for them. It will be hailed as a good spirit so long as there are plenty of yams and children in the family. She's saying, when will I be free? Then she said, oh, never, not even in death. I'm a prisoner of my own flesh and blood. Is it such an enviable position? The men make it look as if we must aspire for children or die, because I failed to live up to the standard expected of me by the males in my family, my father, my husband, and now I have to include my sons. But who made the law that we should not hope in our daughters? We women subscribe to that law more than anyone. Until we change all of this, it's still a man's word, which women will always help build. She has a bunch of places throughout her life where she has had similar introspection, similar awakening moments. You can call it a feminist awakening moment of some sort, even though Buchi Emecheta says that, she never really thought about feminism when she writes her book, right? But she never leans into them. After that passage that I just read, she went back to perpetuating this nonsense. She went back to cuddling her husband. She went back to barely taking a stand. And that's one of the reasons why I feel so sad for her, because character did not deserve all of this. Another interesting thing I was going to talk about is how it feels like we just repeat life. It feels like history just repeats itself. I know we say it all the time, like history repeats itself, but it genuinely feels like it. Since I've been reading this book, I have seen the ways that capitalism, colonialism interacts very specifically with, patriarchal settings and misogyny, to be honest, to then result into situations where women like Nnu Ego would have to, suffer economically and still have to fulfill, even though they're suffering economically along with the men in their society, they still have to fulfill this imaginary role that society has placed on them by virtue of them being women, right? But there's this part where Nnu Ego is talking about the increasing prices of things in Lagos and people moving to Lagos and the effect of the soldiers that came back from the war moving to Lagos and all of them settling down in Lagos, and also a lot of young people are coming from villages and outside of town area to come and make it in Lagos. And we still have the exact same issues today. You might even argue that it's worse today, but from Nnu Ego's perspective, it isn't. Like, obviously, it's the way we think now. Obviously, as Nigerians, if you speak to Nigerians my age or in my age bracket, they'll say, we remember 2010s. Even our parents, as much as day-to-day we're going through it in the 2010s when we were younger, they would say that things are a lot harder now, right? And for me, that's just repetition. It's repeat itself. And a lot of women that are having to go through exactly what Nnu Ego is going through now, still having to carry the burden of, you are married, you should have many children, or you are not yet married, you should go and get married, whilst their husbands are completely useless, and them and their husband are trying to survive the economic situation, whilst their children are then growing up completely malnourished. And that's why we have all these conversations about whether or not poor people should be having children at all, and if they're having children at all, how many children should they be having? Another interesting thing that then pops up is there's no way Nnu Ego was not going to have children because she sleeps with her husband. And we've never, since I started reading this book, there has not been any mention of her going to the hospital. All of her children she has at home. There is definitely then, by extension, no mention of her ever getting contraceptive. So, and we still have the same issue today, right? Where even though we have more hospitals now and all of these things are more established now, a lot of women still can afford to go to the hospital. A lot of them definitely cannot afford to buy contraceptive. And the contraceptives that are readily available, how many men are going to wear condoms? So history repeats itself. We have finished The Joys of Motherhood, and I understand the last page now. The first time I read this book and I got to the last page, I was so confused by the end because I just didn't understand what the author was trying to say, what she was trying to tell me by Nnu Ego's ending. And I can't tell you, you have to read the book to know the ending. I don't think I will read this book. Who knows, in future, if I have a child and I have also gone through the cusp of motherhood, maybe then I will read this book. Maybe then I will have a different understanding of this book. Buchi Emecheta was a brilliant writer. There are so many instances in this book where I could just tell that she was trying to show us the cognitive dissonance that people have when it comes to women and their experiences. Even women themselves, the kind of cognitive dissonance that they experience. Because Nnaife, the husband, for how useless this man was in this book, and this book is not black and white, like, husband bad, wife good. This was not what this book does. So there are many instances in the book where Nnaife is put in situations where they were not his fault. He didn't have a say. I mean, the part where he was forcefully enlisted into the army to fight for the British, obviously that shows the reality of having been African, having been Nigerian at the time and living under colonialism. Yeah. So there are so many instances where they were not his fault. But he enjoyed the privilege of being a man in that world, and of being a man that was married to a woman that grew up in a world where she was taught that men are the be-all and end-all. Because of the world that they both grew up in, they had so much cognitive dissonance that it just doesn't make sense. So, for example, Nnu Ego will keep saying that, the man is the one that owns me, is the one that owns me, even though I'm the one that provides for the family. It's technically the man that provides for the family because he's the one that owns me. And Nnaife, the very, very useless man, would be saying, oh, I provided for this family. I did my all for this family. Now look at what you people are doing to me. You don't want to help me. You don't want to. And I'm like, are we stupid? Did we know those? Interesting thing I wanted to say before I round up this reading vlog. There was a point where Nnu Ego was talking about how she wished she had cultivated the hands of friendship that the women in Lagos, in their community in Lagos, had extended to her. She's deep in thought and she's thinking about how she wished she had cultivated the friendship that the women offered her. But how was she going to do that? Because she was worrying about her children and pregnancy and also lack of money. This just goes to show. I've always said this on this channel. You cannot exist in society as it is today, and apparently as it was in the past. You cannot exist in society, in an urban society for that matter, without female friendship. You need female friendships. It does not necessarily have to be friendship like people you don't know. It can be friendship with your siblings, your female siblings. It can be friendship with your female cousins. It can be friendship with your female neighbors. You just need female friendships. You need female friendships to survive, and you need to cultivate them. Thank you so much for watching me reread the book that changed my life. I cannot remember all the instances or all the ways that this book changed my life, but I am convinced again after having reread this book that this book definitely shaped my life as a reader, and maybe even shaped my life as a woman, to be honest. Having read this book when I was 12, maybe this book did a lot more for me than just shaping the kind of books that I gravitated towards and shaping my reading taste. If you've not read The Joys of Motherhood by Buchi Emecheta, please go and read it. But I would definitely be reading Over is how to pronounce it. But yeah, I'll be reading a body of works. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know if you've read The Joys of Motherhood or any other book by Buchi Emecheta. I can never pronounce her surname. Buchi Emecheta. Thank you again, and I will see you in my next video.